I just looked at a headline in the Washington Post, which said Democrats in Wisconsin are going through it. And I laughed because that's pretty spot on. And it almost seems like all this stuff went down, but it's been like 3 days now. Wanted to check in and see how everybody's feeling and how you're feeling about all of the movement in the Democratic primary for governor.
I believe
after
I called
conversations you've had.
I believe I called it when I likened it to Olympic speed skating and how those first few laps, kind of lollygagging. You're going, is this a real race even? What is this? And then suddenly all hell breaks loose and people wipe out. And sometimes the people that wipe out can get back on the track in time. So yeah, I'll take credit for that. Here's where we are. Couple of laps to go.
I'd like to remind us all that just a couple short weeks ago when we brought this podcast together, we were all saying, something's got to break. We can't have all 7 of these candidates continuing to do what they're doing. So you're
so nice
welcome.
To each other.
Did we jinx the whole process by saying that?
We poked it. We just poked it and said, do something. Yeah. And they did.
We've still got 3 weeks, which, as we all know, is an eternity. And like most people probably haven't even tuned in yet. So let me start off by saying this. Do you guys still think it's anybody's game?
Yes.
No.
Anybody's?
Well,
like
anybody
any
that's
of the
in
5
the race.
candidates?
Yeah.
I don't think all 5 candidates have a chance. We'll see for sure. I mean, we'll know a little bit more after the Marquette poll tomorrow, but
think so though, because the Marquette poll was
its own
in the
level of discombobulation.
Yeah,
can we set the stage for like what that poll is going to, how it was set up, so what the parameters were and what we can expect? Can you give us a little insight on that, Dan?
Well, maybe we should even wind it back a little bit further, because maybe not everybody watching this or listening to this knows every beat by beat of what has happened over the past 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks ago today.
2 weeks ago today is the day that David Crowley ended his campaign. The next day, as we reported first at the Recombobulation area, he was going to endorse Sarah Rodriguez. A few days later, Sarah Rodriguez's campaign released a statement. This was Sunday night. They released a statement saying that they were firing their campaign manager over major mismanagement issues with the campaign finance. Campaign finance filings were due on Wednesday. That was going to be a big deal as part of that, and we started to know those then. And then over the course of the week, a very discombobulating week for Sarah Rodriguez and her campaign that ended with her dropping out last week, Friday. And then David Crowley re-entering the race officially on Saturday with the endorsement of Governor Tony Evers. And here we are a few days later on Tuesday. Has the dust settled yet?
No, and that's why we're waiting on this Marquette poll to see if we can get anything out of it. But I don't know the exact days it was in the field and what all it's going to capture. It certainly isn't. It didn't go all the way up until Crowley getting back in the race just 72 hours ago before we recorded this.
I don't think Crowley is in the poll, and I think that Sarah was in the poll until the final day, and that's what's going to make the results.
So
of
what
this
are we
poll
doing
so
here
confusing.
then? I mean, what it's like, this is just going to confuse people.
It is, until somebody fills the vacuum. And by the way, UpNorth News is going to be filling that vacuum. So stay tuned.
What does that mean?
It means a lot of people assumed that this week's Marquette Law School poll would be the last noteworthy poll about the governor's campaign, and it will not. We are partnering with a couple of friends to put a poll together in the field since all of these developments, and in the coming days, with plenty of time to spare still till the primary, we're going to have a better snapshot of where the public is on these candidates.
When
don't
do you
jinx
anticipate?
it, Pat. You can't say better because you don't know what's going to happen next.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say better than what we're going to learn Wednesday from the Marquette poll just by that. Certainty? No. I would not give you that. But we'll have a later snapshot than we would with this Marquette poll. So we'll stay tuned to UpNorthNews.wi.com, and we'll give you the updates on release dates and how we're going to break it all down.
When do you think it's going to come out?
When do I think it's going to come out? I think it will come out giving people a week or more of decision time before the primary.
Nice.
Very exciting.
Yes.
I do
Very
think there will be
exciting.
something important that comes out of the Marquette poll, though. Like when you look at the individual candidates, that's going to be all messed up. But I think the one thing that we will know, and this is something that Charles Franklin has seen election cycle after election cycle, is that most people are undecided. And I suspect that that'll be the same thing at this stage, and likely will continue to be the same thing until just a few days before the primary.
We've gotten such a good education this past weekend into the bubble and the weirdos that we are who are in the bubble and, what the rest of the world looks like. And we get that even from people very close to us. And I'm not, picking on my wife by any stretch of the imagination, but she started saying some unusual things about one of the candidates, kind of criticizing him. And I said, "Do you mean this other guy?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, that guy." I mean, our spouses, our family members, our best friends sometimes aren't sure who all these people are. So, we're giving our best guesses here, but we've got to remember so many people are going to be very late, turn to their friends and go, "Well, what do you think?" And you just hope they're referring to the right person when they say, "Yeah, I'm with this guy or that gal."
Yeah, that's one of the problems with a crowded primary like this. And we've got a lot of talented people in the race at this point. I don't know if anybody else is going to drop or if, I'm kind of I feel like they should all stay in it at this point and we'll see where the votes are, because it is really hard to see. I think for a lot of people who don't follow as closely as we do, a lot of the candidates, we've been watching, they've been in panels all over the state and they've been everywhere talking about their stuff. There's not a lot of difference in their policy ideas or their values, right? So I think people are having a hard time. They're kind of getting the gist of everybody seems pretty good, which I think is pretty true. So they're looking for ways to differentiate between them. I'm not sure that sparring back and forth on Twitter is really going to do that for people. But I do think these endorsements, starting with Evers, as big of a shakeup as it was, and even though technically he wasn't going to do that, I'm kind of well, he did. That's what happened. He did. And I think big endorsements like that do start to move the needle for people. And I just saw one this morning. I think some more current legislators are coming out and endorsing certain candidates. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see more of those roll out and see if they have an impact. Are there any other notable endorsements that you guys have seen or that you are looking for and waiting for?
Was you commenting last week about how Senator Kelda Roys was looking to get more of her colleagues in the legislature to finally commit, obviously hoping they'd endorse her or at least somebody. And, to her credit, quite a few legislators over the past few days have come out and endorsed for Kelda. But David Crowley, rolled out several mayoral endorsements. There have been some union endorsements that have come out late. To what degree do any of them carry weight other than the Evers one? I guess that's all for each individual. If they see somebody, "Oh, the Sheboygan mayor went this way. Okay, well, I like my mayor." So yes, I don't know how big the endorsements go. I think much more about where the endorsements didn't go. And if I could just put some of these candidates on a therapy couch and go, "How did you feel when the governor that you served for all these years and talked you up so much decided to endorse not you, not either of his lieutenant governors, not his one of his first picks as a top cabinet official, certainly not earlier his top economic development official, not two well-respected legislators, but the guy who wasn't in the race and got back in." That I got a lot of criticism for criticizing that. Tony Evers never said he wasn't going to endorse. I think, Dan, correct me, it was Jason Calvi at Fox 6 who had the quote from the governor a year ago saying, "I may not endorse, but never say never. And if I think I want to, I will." And that's his right. I just really question the timing of it at this point. And obviously that's what was the bulk of the conversation. Does anybody else think the Evers endorsement really cuts one way or the other?
I think that there is this overriding feeling out there from people in our bubble that there's some sort of a Democratic cabal.
From the
And that,
establishment, yes.
Yeah, the establishment, like Governor Evers is telling people what to do, or Devin Remiker is running everything behind the scenes. And, that's just not the case. There are people who have preferences and everybody's having conversations, but there's no puppet master.
Yeah, I'm kind of annoyed by these establishment talks too, because everybody just, and I kind of made this point when I was talking in an interview I did with Francesca Hong. I think the way that conservatives use woke to say that everything I don't like is woke. For Democrats, everything I don't like is the establishment, right? And so I think there's all these conversations about who is the establishment, who isn't the establishment, who is making these decisions, who's pulling the strings. There's no they. There's no establishment. It's just, and frankly, I don't have a problem with Evers deciding to endorse in this. I don't.
I don't either.
I understand why people are frustrated with it. I've heard from some folks that they don't think it's a smart decision, but he wanted to endorse a candidate, and he really likes David Crowley, and so we wanted to endorse David Crowley. I don't think it goes a whole lot further than that, to be perfectly honest.
And I think a lot of the people who have problems with this, and I don't think we need a therapy couch to understand how some people felt about this. It's been pretty clear, and I understand. I get it. That's tough. But I think the people who are really against it just have been working in politics for a long time, and there's a certain way that things go. And it makes them nervous when that just goes differently. It's like, whoa, this isn't the way it works. And I personally kind of love that, because that's kind of the reason I started getting into it. I'm like, I feel like with politics, everybody, it's like old school and everybody does things a certain way, and it's like hasn't modernized. And so I'm kind of like, rewrite the rules. Like, as long as you're not really breaking any rules. And I mean, why not? That's kind of where I've been on this. I don't know if it'll move the needle either way. I guess we will see. I don't know if we're really going to figure out who's really gaining momentum or not. And the one person I really think about a lot with that, I guess now Crowley too, I wonder about, but also Kelda. I've gotten so many messages about Kelda, people liking her, and they're like, why has she not gained momentum? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. I do sense that she is gaining more momentum, but we haven't seen that data wise. But I know, Kristin, you have said similar things, right?
I actually just interviewed her this morning, and she has a ton of momentum in Northeast Wisconsin. She's really invested up here. And as I was interviewing her, I was thinking, damn, she is so good. Like, she's got all this experience. She's so convincing. She's got money. She's been on TV. She would be such a great governor. And I'm not endorsing Kelda. I'm not endorsing anybody. But yeah, there is a lot. She has a spark. And I can't explain why it's not breaking through. I don't know. Maybe our reporters know better. Kate and I are just, influencers. You guys are the real deal.
Well, as you would expect somebody from deep within the establishment to say, I share a lot of what Kristin is saying. As a former state senator, to see a state senator like Kelda Roys, who's been doing this for, a quarter century, as she likes to say over and over again. She has all this experience. She has, being a lawyer. She's got background. She's got advocacy behind her. And she sees somebody from the assembly, and trust me, every senator looks down on the assembly as who are you. Here's this assembly rep who's been there less than 6 years and has caught fire. And I'm sure she's sitting there going, what do I got to do? I have done everything right. But, as Kate just said, the rules aren't always there to be followed. There's not always going to be the most experienced person is the next one up. I don't know, Dan.
Yeah, I think the analogy that I've been making with her campaign is that meme from the documentary The Last Dance about Michael Jordan's final season, where Isaiah Thomas was talking about how he did not get selected for the dream team, where he's like, I met the criteria, but I wasn't selected. And for whatever reason, that seems to be what's happening with Kelda Roys. And I had talked to a couple, Milwaukee area friends who were backing David Crowley, and then we're backing Sarah Rodriguez, and then we're like, okay, maybe Kelda Roys. But then I think Crowley getting back in really changes that calculus in a few different ways. Obviously, the governor's endorsement is a big deal. I do think it matters that Kelda's picking up a few legislative endorsements. I think those are a big deal. But to wind it back to what you were saying before about like how if we're looking for any endorsements that will matter in this race, obviously the governor's is going to be a big deal. And in like Wisconsin's Democratic members of Congress, I don't anticipate Tammy Baldwin's going to be making an endorsement in this race. I don't anticipate that Mark Pocan's going to be making an endorsement in this race. I wonder what Gwen Moore's going to do, because she kind of hinted at it in an upfront interview a couple weeks ago. And this was, I mean, what is time? But I don't remember who was in and who was not at this point. But I am kind of watching to see if
I think
Gwen
he
Moore
had
is going to
just
wade
gotten
in.
out, and she said
Yeah.
she doesn't know if she's going to endorse now because that like changed things for her. It made it seem like she was planning on supporting him, and I don't know if that's publicly or privately, but yeah, I think that was interesting as well. And Crowley obviously has a lot of support in the Milwaukee area. It's like we don't know how that's translating in other areas of the state. And I don't know.
Speak to Northeast Wisconsin. He has not really been up here, so people don't know who he is.
Oh, we talked to you the other day, but other than that.
Yeah, right. There were 50 people there, though. I mean, on a day's notice, 50 people showed up. So that was impressive.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen for Crowley this entire time throughout this race, is that I think he's well known in southeastern Wisconsin. He's well liked among Democrats here. Do people in the Fox Valley in northeastern Wisconsin know him? Do people in La Crosse and Eau Claire in western Wisconsin know him? The data was suggesting no. And I think because he was running the type of campaign that he was running, which was not breaking through, which was not particularly an interesting campaign, I think that was struggling to resonate statewide. If we're looking at the geography of this race, could he run up some bigger numbers in the Milwaukee area? Maybe. But you go to the east side or Bayview in Milwaukee, there's a lot of Francesca Hong signs there too. So,
Yes.
and there's a lot of folks who on the east side, they have elected a Democratic socialist to the Common Council. And so I think, Pat, I'm curious to know, does anybody in your district know who David Crowley is?
Just the people who are the most active, the insiders who've welcomed him when he comes up to make appearances, and maybe he's gotten on local TV. But you notice, I'm smiling through all that because, much like I said about Kelda 5 minutes ago, you went on, and I'm just imagining Mandela Barnes going, what's the guy got to do? I'm here too. And that's how definitely a lot of these candidates feel like it's just Fran versus the field, and they only get mentioned in a discussion of the field. But David Crowley, no different than any of the others. So what I'm focusing on is admittedly superficial, but we always said, why aren't they on TV yet? Why aren't they on TV yet? Well, we're at 3 weeks to go. And frankly, a lot of people will be looking at those commercials when they're watching their local news or whatever and seeing if it impresses them. I have to admit, I haven't seen any. I haven't seen any ads where I'm going, wow, that person might have just really helped themselves with that ad or hurt themselves. But we're getting to that window now for the public, I think.
Yeah, even digitally, like I'm not seeing even in any like pre-roll or any. I mean, I know we've talked about this. I get Tom Tiffany's a lot, but I think, yeah, I'm assuming everybody has money, so I'm assuming they're gonna like start spending it, or they should if they haven't yet, to try to get that name recognition out there. I do know like Mandela had a new TV spot out. I mean, I see the press releases about the TV spots, but not the actual TV spots, right?
And Joel
And
Brennan's
most
been
people
out
don't
on
see
TV.
the press releases. Have you seen
Brennan's
one?
been out on. I saw one, and I've seen him on I've seen him on Instagram and stuff. But he's also had a couple endorsements that Pat pointed out are big endorsements in northern Wisconsin, maybe not resonating across Wisconsin. But is this Joel Brennan's breakout moment, and is he getting anywhere with all of this money that he spent so far? Field.
And again, because he's not very well known, he needed to take that gamble of going in with a big buy earlier than most people would to see if he can move the needle. But unfortunately, those endorsements by former Senator Janet Bewley up in the Ashland area and Attorney Chris Bremer-Moogly up in north central Wisconsin, I mean, they probably would have been more helpful to come a little bit earlier so that networking around there would have the opportunity to, get the word out about Joel Brennan. And instead, where we are is Brennan probably has not moved the needle much with those TV ads. And I just don't know if the other ads are going to do the same, or if we're really just, everybody wants to say Fran is the prohibitive favorite, which is based on a very small amount of scientific polling. If we're all going to be honest with each other,
What do you mean?
It's more buzz and vibe than anything else.
It is polling, though, too. She was always at the top of the Marquette polls. And I think, let me just say this. I feel like a shift has happened in this past week, not just with all the other candidates, but everybody I'm talking to behind the scenes who's in politics are starting to realize that she's clearly the front runner. And I think, hearing all of, this whole time, I've always seen her campaign for doing what it is with building the grassroots support and the momentum and doing things differently and showing up authentically. And that matters so much at this point in time. That matters almost more than Mandela's name recognition, I think. People are in a really they're in a specific place right now. Emotionally, with everything going on, they're tuned in, they're angry. And I've always, since the beginning, been like, yeah, her campaign's going to do something. I don't know exactly what, but people should not write it off. And I feel like people are starting to say, oh, okay, Fran, if this is a speed skating race, she's pulled ahead. Can anybody catch her at this point is the question. Do you guys agree with that?
I do. And I think the Republican Governors Association ad is proof that they think that she can be the nominee. And I think that ad suggests that they would prefer for her to be the nominee, and that they think that she is the candidate that Tiffany has the best chance against. To the extent that calculus adds up, everybody can kind of draw their own conclusions on that one. But I do think she started the race as the wild card. She made herself a contender by running what I still think is the best campaign that anybody has run in this race. She has upended the way that people are organizing across the state. She has by far the best ground game of anybody in the state. She is flipped the way to do this on its head, and all the rest of the field that wants to fundraise at these wine and cheese plate fundraisers, she's out there hitting the pavement, doing weird concerts and, going to dive bars and coffee shops and all sorts of stuff. And I think so many of the other campaigns have just struggled to catch up to the changing dynamics of the way that modern politics works. And she is just running circles around people on that. But, it's still a competition. It's still a competition. And, to the extent that it's like, well, this endorsement is the establishment. This endorsement means that, whatever. No, it's a competition. The other folks are finally stepping up to actually compete here. And, we're really in the home stretch, and, we'll see. She could win. She could win the nomination.
Well, but that's where you get into this Fran versus the field talk of, okay, that works until August 12th. The day after the primary. And then it's no longer just the other candidates who didn't win. It's everybody, call them establishment or whatever you want, who will say, all right, well, she won the Democratic primary. Now what? And of course, we'll be seeing all these ads calling her a communist and a socialist and Madison this and Madison that. And it's just part of the dichotomy of, primary politics versus general election politics. All praise and credit to Fran for everything she's done up to this point. But, again, we can't kid ourselves that that's necessarily going to translate into a general election. Will she campaign unlike any other general election nominee if she wins on August 11th? Sure she will. But she'll also be going up against Tom Tiffany and, the 3 billionaires who are bankrolling him and just about every other Republican cause out there. And if Fran's the nominee, and if Fran loses, buy some earplugs, folks, because the told you so's are going to be deafening.
But here's what's interesting. She's already gotten a lot of shit thrown at her. She's the one campaign that, it's like she's Teflon. It doesn't affect her campaign. In fact, all the attacks almost add more momentum or strength to her. So, obviously we've never seen here a statewide campaign where the person in the general is a socialist like Fran, has been so outspoken, is one with the people. So I don't know that we know. We can guess how the attack ads are going to be, and guys, they'd be bad, right?
Scorched earth.
Yep.
scorched earth and 24/7. And so, but in a year like this, I think they'd be like that against most people. And it seems like she has, like, I don't know if you want to call it thicker skin or whatever, but it doesn't seem to, like, get
Kate,
under her campaign's skin.
It's the phrase I wanted to use last week, and I wasn't sure if it was allowed or not, but apparently it is. But this is what makes Fran different. She has no fucks to give. None. None. If others are hoping to get something done in the legislature or maybe get a consultant job or a lobbyist job or whatever they do. And Fran's point of view is like, you know what? I'm putting it all out there, and if y'all don't like it, I can open up another restaurant. I can go be a line cook. I can, just have more time with my kids. It is that kind of an attitude that creates the Teflon. It's that kind of confidence. And, we have no idea if at night she's crying into a pillow or if she's hitting it with her fist. But either way, she's making it work when she's out there in public.
How does that kind of an attitude work when you are actually sitting in the governor's chair and you are trying to get shit done in this state that is so closely divided? I think that is one of my major concerns. I love Fran, and I so appreciate her hive and her visibility, and the way that she's approached this campaign has been exciting. It's gotten people who otherwise wouldn't pay attention to pay attention. The Republican Governors Association ad that you referred to before, Dan, where they are actually promoting her because they want her to win. My son saw that on TV and he was like, "Mom, it's Fran." He thought it was a Fran commercial. It's an effective commercial. So this is a really different kind of a campaign. But can Fran actually do the job if she were able to be elected?
I think she can. And I understand people's concerns about that. I also understand people's concerns about her in general. I don't know her like super well, but I feel like I know her well enough to understand she is a serious candidate, a serious lawmaker. She cares deeply about the people of Wisconsin. She really doesn't have much of an ego. And I think she would understand that going into a general, tone may need to shift a little bit, and she may need to be a bit more compliant with some messaging. We're already kind of seeing that, where somebody asked her about defunding the police and she says, "No, I don't want to defund the police, and I don't want to abolish police." I think, and I'm not saying she's going to sell out. She's not going to sell out, but I do think she understands the seriousness of the role, both competing in a general election and also would in as governor. That being said, if we also flipped the both chambers and we had, Greta Neubauer and Diane Hasselbein, I mean, Fran and those two are maybe coming at things from different directions. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though, either. I mean, that's still having sort of checks and balances in there. And I don't think she's the kind of candidate who's just going to be all egotistical and do whatever she wants. Maybe I'm being naive, but I see her respecting the process and the seriousness of what this is.
Pat, you've been there in the legislature working with a governor. How does that play out in your mind?
Well, I've watched this in the administrations of both Tony Evers and Jim Doyle, where, again, you have what become these turf battles. I've seen, renegade governors who were going to just sweep in and get stuff done, a la Jesse Ventura, who basically just got marginalized. Democrats and Republicans in the Minnesota legislature said, well, we'll just work around him and we'll overturn his vetoes. And they did. So it is, people are correct to say, hey, it's one thing to campaign, it's another to govern. And if you're seen as doing this more for, show business or ego or whatever the case may be, I'm not referencing Fran specifically, but anybody, they'll work around you. The establishment is undefeated for a reason. It has the inertia, the institutional inertia that will stop any renegade in their tracks, which is going to take somebody like Fran or anybody else and say, okay, you won. Now let's get serious. Let's build relationships, and let's understand we're not going to go to a $25 minimum wage next year. I'm sorry, folks, we're not. Fran could get 80% of the vote. That's still not going to happen because of the institutional inertia that WMC will bring to the legislature and everything else. So, yeah, the leadership in an executive office is definitely not the same as being a successful campaigner.
At the same time, I don't think people should underestimate her on that front either. I think there was the campaign finance reports came out last week, and there were all these rumors in the kind of weeks and months before this that Francesca Hong's campaign was spending every dollar that was coming in. That they were saying that they're just flooding the zone with digital dollars. They're spending so much more than any other campaign. That's why we're seeing them everywhere. That's why the campaign is so ubiquitous. We saw the numbers last week. She did not do that. She did not spend every dollar that came in. And so, again, just keep underestimating her at your own peril, because I think that the people who have underestimated her thus far are the ones who've been proven wrong.
You know who we haven't talked about is Mandela Barnes. And it feels like he is such a dark horse here because he came in with the highest name ID in a very controversial entry into the race where the Milwaukee Courier was saying, I think they ended the article saying, respectfully, please, Mandela, don't enter this race. He's had some peaks. He's had some valleys. It seems like his stock is falling right now. Where do you think Mandela factors in?
This is hard. I don't know. So, as the person who created Moms for Mandela in 2022 and was very excited about his campaign, rallied a lot of moms and women around it, was the first time I'd really gotten that involved in politics. He at that time was somebody who was inspiring and made this boring thing, politics, exciting to be around and to feel hopeful for. And I do think in the right scenarios, he still does that. But I do feel like even back then, I felt I didn't know anything at that point. So I wasn't going to say anything. But I even felt like it was too safe a lot, very cautious, a little too scripted. And I actually was okay with him jumping back into this because I feel like, everybody learns and grows. And I'm like, I'm sure he probably has learned some things and would do things a little differently. And I think he's almost more cautious and careful this campaign. And it's not really anything bad that he's done. It's just because of that mindset, that's, I feel like, why he hasn't broken through, because there are so many other really talented people in the field. That's kind of my take on it. Would I trust him to govern the state still? Yeah. But I'm just not seeing a lot of people putting him up on a pedestal with everybody else in the race right now. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know what you guys think. I got to do the Pat thing where I call on people. And Dan, what do you think about that?
Well done.
Look, he came into this race with the highest name ID by far. And I think he was, I think there was in one of I want to say it was one of the Journal Sentinel stories last week from Jesse Apoyan saying that it was his race to lose and he's losing it, from one of the quotes that was out there. But the thing is, he could still be the nominee. He could still win this race. I am not counting him out in this race. I want to see what happens over the next few weeks. I want to see how he responds to David Crowley getting back in and being visible and campaigning in this race. I want to see what he does. And I think when we're looking at the Marquette poll, and there's going to be an asterisk on every single one of those numbers in the Marquette poll, I think the Mandela Barnes number is the one I'm going to be most interested in. Because as people have talked about, people think that the line has gone down on his campaign. Is that the case? Because he had the highest name ID, and people know him. Is that translating in this poll? Because his status in the race did not change throughout the course of when this poll was being conducted. So at 12:15 tomorrow, when I'm at Marquette University, sitting there with the rest of the nerds in Milwaukee, like I always do, covering this live, I think the Mandela Barnes poll results numbers are the ones that I'm going to be looking to first.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking to you instead of looking at their Twitter feed. Are you going to be live streaming your real time reaction and face to this? Because do you get a sneak peek even?
No, I always. So my friend John Johnson, who I did the ranked choice voting experiment with, works on the Marquette poll, and I annoy, as I did this morning, I annoy him and see, hey, can you leak the poll to me? Everybody would love that. He never does, of course. And so they will put this out at 12:15. It happens at Marquette University Law School. Anybody is welcome to go. I go every time because I'm a nerd and I love this stuff. And I have written a breakdown of every Marquette University Law School poll since I started the Recombobulation area. And so I will be live tweeting the results from there. And I will be probably talking to Charles Franklin and John Johnson a little bit afterwards to try to really make sense of what this poll actually means. But I think Mandela Barnes and Kelda Roys and Joel Brennan, I'm going to be interested with the poll numbers for the three of them. And there's been so many changes for, David Crowley and Sarah Rodriguez and everybody else in this race. But I'm really going to be interested to see where they're at. And if they're, on the decline or whatever it might be, if they have to make some tough decisions with their campaigns afterwards. I was at the David Crowley event on Saturday, too. And one of the people I talked to there was Ann Jacobs, the past chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. She was there supporting Crowley. She said she was a Crowley supporter and then a Rodriguez supporter and then back to being a Crowley supporter. And she said that she's interested in seeing what Joel Brennan's numbers are there, too, because, he's somebody who has a pretty big presence in the Milwaukee area and in some of those circles. If he's still in the very low single digits, does he have to make a tough decision, too? So I think for those three candidates, I'm really going to be looking closely at those results.
I wondered if somebody's numbers are going to be unusually high or unusually low. What will surprise us, again, with an asterisk next to all of it. But let's really turn it on its head. What if there's a number for Sarah Rodriguez that is significantly higher than anybody would have thought? What if she really was gaining all kinds of momentum? At what point does she go, well, if David Crowley can get back into this thing? Is it going to happen? No. Am I going to put money on zero? No.
I think Sarah's probably thanking her lucky stars that actually Tony did endorse David and has created this whole other big story, because I think her story kind of washed away with the news cycle, and hopefully people will kind of forget about it and she can lay low for a while and then continue having a career in politics. That, I feel like if I was her, I'd be like, wow, the timing, magnificent. Because nobody's talking about her campaign finance reports anymore.
No, but you know what people are talking about? The 70,000 ballots that have already been mailed in.
Yes.
Yep.
Before all of this chaos happened. So for the people who got their ballots, like Pat and I, and filled them out right away and sent them in, we no longer spoil ballots. That is your vote. And if your candidate is not there anymore, think of all the people who probably voted for Sarah Rodriguez because of all the momentum that she had. And what happens with that?
So I haven't talked about this much because, I don't want to say anything wrong, and I don't know. I sat on that call for the Wisconsin Elections Commission when they were going to vote on that, because I was getting questions from people who had voted for Crowley and then he dropped out, and I asked some people I know, and they're like, actually, WEC is talking about it today. It's on the agenda. So I joined the call, and I saw them talk about it, and then I saw them all vote. They're like, at first they said, well, it's up to each clerk. Whatever clerk can make a decision if they want to let you spoil it or not. And I'm sitting here like, that seems crazy.
Confusing.
Yes. And they were like, yeah, that's leaving too much out there. So I think we need to vote on it and make it uniform. So they did vote on it, and they all, except one person, voted. I think Ann Jacobs actually was the only one against it, to say no anymore. But I'm still getting messages from people that different clerks are letting them do that. So if that was you and you want to change it, I don't know if this is bad advice or even legal to say, but I don't know if all the clerks have gotten the message, and it is just a little confusing. Dan, what happened?
Even you have the same breaking news there, Dan?
Some of this is unfolding in real time here.
Yes.
So according to a tweet from Molly Beck at the Journal Sentinel, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin sent a letter to state elections commissioners today asking them to immediately rescind guidance that bars absentee voters from requesting a new ballot if their preferred candidate drops out. And then Wisconsin Elections Commission's chairman, Don Millis, tells me he has no plans to call a meeting on the guidance at issue. Millis says state law is clear in his view. Again, that's from Molly Beck at the Journal Sentinel.
And I don't know if it's clear, but Devin Remaker said in a release just now, allowing voters to spoil and recast their ballots was standard practice in Wisconsin prior to attempts by Republicans to file frivolous lawsuits to muddy the waters.
Yeah.
We believe the guidance was issued improperly, and after consulting with each of the Democratic candidates for governor, we are submitting this letter formally asking the commission to retract their guidance. Probably won't, but I mean, what I wondered is, does this just turn all of Sarah Rodriguez's and Missy Hughes's voters into liars? In other words, do they have to go to their clerk now and go, you know what? I just remembered I spilled coffee on that ballot, or it's torn up, so you got to put that in the shredder and give me a new one, and not say, well, I voted for somebody else. Because
and that's the thing.
you can
it's
say,
not
you can give other
supposed to
reasons for
matter.
you can give other reasons for your ballot being spoiled, and I just think it causes a lot of confusion.
Because
has right here.
when they receive your ballot, and this is the conversation they were having in real time in the meeting, they were like, when the clerk receives your ballot, it's not submitted into the voting machine yet. They're just kind of holding on to it. So if you say it's spoiled, technically it's like there's no difference from it sitting there or on your kitchen counter. And you're technically allowed to do that, I think, 3 times, like if you spill coffee on it or whatever. So that's what some of them were saying. They were like, well, it's not really submitted until it goes into the voting machine. And so I was kind of shocked watching this unfold. But again, it was very like inside baseball that I'm like, is this normal? I also was like shocked that it's mid-July and we're having this conversation that affects so many people in this state. Like, don't you think this should have been figured out a while ago?
Why, yes.
Like, guys,
couldn't
explain
agree
this
more.
to me, how this works. Like, I'm just shocked at this whole thing. And what happens now?
Well, I mean, this we've seen. I mean, we really saw it during COVID, of course. But even before that, we saw essentially not real time legislating per se, but we saw situations come up, and that's what you have an elections commission for, and courts as well by extension, is to say, here's something we didn't even think of until it came up, and now we've got this. I don't want to get too off track, but it raises a case as to when should the filing deadline be, because you've got 7 candidates on there, and 2 of them dropped out and then 1 came back in. So if we're going to have a process where candidates can drop out after their names are already on the ballot, you'd better have rules for taking care of the people who cast these ballots the way that they did, or just tell everybody, hang on to that ballot until like 2 days before the election, and then bring it to your clerk, deliver it by hand.
And figure out where you can deliver it or drop it, because everybody is different. I interviewed Ann Jacobs last week for my show, and it is just, there are so many hits happening to our voting process all over the country, and there's so much that we're doing in Wisconsin to try to protect it. But the one thing that she really emphasized is that every clerk in our own municipalities, they own that election, and the people who administer those elections are our neighbors and our friends, and they take this job really, really seriously. So what we can all do as citizens of Wisconsin is sign up to be a poll worker, sign up to be a poll watcher, be part of the process. It is not a huge undertaking, and it really does make a difference when we are trying to protect our ability to vote and to preserve our democracy.
And be an observer in cases where I think first Milwaukee, but certainly any place, suddenly we see some federal officers standing outside some of the polling places as an intimidation tactic. Don't rule that out.
Yeah. And when we stand together, they're trying to intimidate, right? That's all part of it. Make people scared, make people worried that there are going to be charges or whatever brought against you. When we stand together, we are going to feel so much more supported and so much more likely to step up. So that's why there's power in numbers.
Yeah, and I think, I know I need to be talking about this a lot more, especially heading into November. But we can guess what Trump is going to do. He's already signaled some things, some intimidation tactics, like you mentioned. He wants the voter rolls. And I think I specifically with my audience need to be talking about this more, about how elections are truly run locally, not just at the state level, but down to the county level or the city or village you live in. So that is part of the reason they are so secure, because it is not really centralized. All of these different people are running it. But I do think people need to really understand that and, support them any way they can, because I think this is going to be a big challenge moving forward. But also, this is why this news from the Wisconsin Elections Commission I don't love that it went down like this, because we're telling people, no, everything's good. Trust your local people. And I'm not saying this is not trustworthy, but it's a bit confusing, and I don't love that there's a confusing piece of information out there about people's ballots when we're like really trying to like make sure everybody believes in democracy and that the elections are all good.
Yeah, the democracy is really messy that way, isn't it? You know who else we haven't talked about so far?
Who?
Again,
Who?
Tom Tiffany. Again, another
That
week.
guy,
Another
Congressman
week.
Tom Tiffany.
Toxic Tom is unscathed yet again because,
betcha.
again, I haven't seen a ton of TV, but I can tell you the ratio of Tom Tiffany ads to ads critical of Tom Tiffany still is 100-0. Where's the cavalry? Don't know.
That's a great question. And
Here's the
way that
cavalry. Tom Tiffany is a loser who will take your money and give it to billionaires. He doesn't care about you. He never did. And he has a very creepy smile. So,
he's
cut
really
that,
leaning.
Put it on
Got
air.
that. Got it.
Cut that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He's really leaning into this folksy Wisconsin. A lot of people think he's a farmer. He is not a farmer. He is an anti-abortion Trump puppet Congressman Tom Tiffany. And we've got to just drill that everywhere that we can. He is not this nice guy with an old fashioned in his hand. That's all a joke. This is up to us at this stage in the game. The cavalry is coming, but it's just not there.
It is, but at
it's
this
on
point,
its way.
So many people should already know that this guy would turn the entire Northwoods into strip mines and strip malls
Yeah.
if he could. He's wrong on a million positions, starting with, insert your issue here. I'll put in, I don't know, helping defend a pedophile by not releasing the Epstein files, by voting against that. Or you could lead with, wanting to undermine democracy by voting to overthrow election results from 2020. And yet the number of people in Wisconsin who know these things is still way, way, way too small.
And he bills himself as a steward of taxpayer dollars or whatever it is. He voted for Foxconn.
Yes.
And he backed Doge, which I
Yes.
think those Doge cuts are resulting in quite a few problems that he has not had to answer for, too. Nationwide diarrhea outbreak.
Go get your diaper,
It's like
Tom.
that meme
Like,
of like the new puppy versus diarrhea forever. It has never been more real than it is right now in those elections.
And we don't
has
know which
Tom
puppy
Tiffany
it's-
been asked about that?
Don't know which puppy it's going to be yet, but that's the point here. We've been talking about all the puppies. All the puppies are good. Any of the puppies would be a good choice versus diarrhea. Choose the puppies, kids.
puppies also sometimes have diarrhea, but we don't need to get into that. And I think, like, in
Let's
his
not.
latest ad, somebody asks him, like, when his siblings are all around him, too, they talk about, like, healthcare, and he's like, about healthcare prices, and he's like, I'm going to make it more transparent. He doesn't even say that he's going to actually lower healthcare prices. And he voted against a bill in Congress to make it more transparent. Like, if you look at what he says and then actually look at his vote records, you can pretty much debunk him on everything, except, yeah, we need to do that because we can't expect voters to do that, or people with a lot more money and influence than us who can cut real TV ads can do that, and I think that they will. But his record is not good. He just looks like he's not too big of trouble, but
Tom Tiffany is responsible for our affordability healthcare crisis. Tom Tiffany is responsible for rural hospitals closing. Tom Tiffany is responsible for your increased ACA premiums that make it impossible for you to afford healthcare. And that's going to get worse in January. So we have to hold Tom Tiffany accountable for all of his bad votes, both as a state legislator. And Pat, you know this because you were there with him. And as a congressman, he is not a farmer. He is not a nice guy at the bar. He is a rotten person who is stealing from the poor and giving to the rich.
I called for the cavalry, and I can hear a bugle in the background. Good job, everybody.
the cavalry is coming. He's not good. Bad news bears. We just got to make sure people know that and say it over and over again like that, just as much as we can. Because I think sometimes the extremist language can be overused sometimes, but he really is one of the most extreme members of Congress, and there's quite a few votes where he was one of very few, even among Republicans, to vote in a crazy way. So
Uh-huh.
He's the most far right candidate that Republicans have run in a statewide race in Wisconsin, period. He is no moderate by any stretch of the imagination. He is very far to the right. He's not even trying to appeal to the center, which is why I think he's running a pretty bad campaign, given the fact that he has this huge runway to run a general election. He's running as if this were a primary. He's running as if that he was trying to outflank somebody from the right in the primary. And for as much as people are talking about, oh, he's got this war chest, but he's running ads, whatever. I think even though he has all this runway, there's all this chaos happening on the other side, I think he's still running a terrible campaign. Because he's running one that is appealing only to like a sliver of voters on the right. He is not appealing to the moderates in Waukesha County. He's not appealing to the moderates in other parts of the state. He is running a race that is a base activating race. And I think that is a really, really poor strategy. And it reminds me of just like, he's running a campaign like he's Dan Kelly or whatever, trying to run something that's really, really far right.
But that
I think that the fact that he has not put any distance between he and Donald Trump on anything is really going to come back to bite him. He is to the right of Scott Walker. He is to the right of Robin Voss. He is to the right of so many of these other folks that we have seen be a very far right leaders in the state of Wisconsin, and he is well to the right of all.
But they feel like that's their only path. Tiffany, Derek Van Orden, and others is try to get the hive for Trump just so jazzed that they all show up and then muddy the waters with attack ads so that everybody else throws up their hands and stays home.
Except that he's also boring. That's their other problem. Like, call Derek Van Orden anything you want. I'll agree with any of it. He's not necessarily boring. He's getting the clips out there, the news. He's getting some coverage. Tom Tiffany's just so boring. So it's like, if you're going to be that extreme, go with it. But he's not even doing that. So I think he's being extreme
Tony
and
Evers,
playing it safe.
To quote Tony Evers, boring wins.
It did. Boring
Especially when it's holding an old fashioned and saying, you betcha.
Maybe he needs the Eric Hovde thing and just jump shirtless into some icy water.
Oh, no. Please, no. Please, no. I had finally just gotten that out of my mind, I think, but there it is.
Now we have to put a warning label on this episode. Darn.
Okay, well, I think that's pretty good for today. I know.
Okay, I want to comment on one more thing, though. Kate and you and I were both commenting on this over the weekend. On social media. So there was a Politico story saying the race is now chaos about Wisconsin. People are going into freak out mode, whatever. I said this and you said this. We're living in an attention economy. People were not paying attention to this race beforehand. Trump has used chaos to his advantage in campaigns and wherever else. People were not paying attention to this race necessarily before. They might be now. It might not be for the best reasons, but people are paying attention to it now. And I think lean into the chaos, embrace the crazy, embrace the attention that this brings.
Absolutely. And that's like advice for the candidates too. It's like, and I know I'm also like, okay, guys, stop being dramatic. But then I'm also like, but stir it up a little because you got 3 weeks to go. Lay it all out on the table. Let's fucking go, People are paying attention, and I think it's only going to get crazier from here on out. So we will see what happens with the Marquette poll tomorrow. Just another reminder to listeners to take all that stuff with a grain of salt and head to Dan's Twitter or Pat or for a bit more context on those results within the current field and how it's shaping up.
And you know what? We've got a forum. We've got a debate coming up. Yes, in 1 week.
Yes, 1 week.
Yes.
Oh,
that's right.
What's the day? Like a week from today?
The 28th, right? A week from
28th.
today.
Where is it?
It will be the one and only TV debate.
In Milwaukee, WISN 12. Tuesday
is Matt
evening.
doing it?
I believe Matt Smith and Jaron Jordan are the moderators for this.
Are you Is anybody going?
I'm going to try to go.
Oh my God, should I try to go too? Can somebody who's listening please get me a press pass for that? I know I'm not real
picturing
press.
a velvet rope in front of the WISN building. Mr. Shafer, you're on the clipboard. You can come in.
They don't have an influencers pod? Come on.
Yeah.
No, I have to call in
this?
favors to get added to frickin' lists, but maybe I can figure something out. Yeah, I'll go in I might have to go in with somebody's team or something like that, and put on some sunglasses. But
Kristin will be in there. She'll open the door for you. Don't worry.
Kristin, you're in?
Girl's got connections.
Oh,
you could be. You could be.
I think we all.
Well, yeah, that'll be good. I think a lot of people will be paying attention to that, and we will be ready to clip some of the best moments and get those out. And so, another note to candidates: think about what's clippable. Have some lines in your head that would do really well. and say those.
Could you please set us up for future social media
Yes.
success?
Yes.
Make our job easier, please?
Oh,
and
you
thank
know, there's
Please have
social
some
media
rehearsed
teams.
authenticity for
Yes,
us, please.
exactly. Senator, I served with Jack Kennedy. Yes, have those things ready to roll.
So are we going to do this all again, like maybe next Wednesday? We can work on the details offline, but we're coming back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're here for life, you know? We all live here. So we're coming back anytime anybody needs a little bit of conversation about what's going on. So
And in the meantime, we need people to share this information, to talk about it, to comment, to like, to subscribe, do all of those things because, yeah, like Kate said, we're going to be around.
all right. Well, take it easy, guys. Good luck out there.
Thank you.
Let's go.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.